Welcome to another episode of Black Fathers Go Further. I am your host, Marty Nice, aka Big Malcolm. Listen, love me or hate me, agree or debate me. That's my slogan. And my guest today, fabulous young man, and I promise you, I never met this guy. This is my first time actually talking to him. We spoke over social media, and I was referred to him by a fellow friend of mine, Mike Dorsey, who also does a podcast.
Right.
He said to me, you're doing a lot of good things with your podcast. I like what's happening. You need to look into this brother, Mark Winkler. He's out in LA with you, and he's very positive. He's doing a lot of good things for young Black men and fathers. You need to look into him. So I did. His name is Mark Winkler. He's the author of, a must read before I go to bed, okay? Can y'all see that? My Daughter's Keeper. Young fathers out there, old fathers out there, fathers out there. Please get this book. What I like about Mark is like the chapters in his book, like he make you want to go right to those chapters by the titles, the breakup, the awakening. You see stuff like that. Wow, what is this all about? Okay. But Mark is a positive brother who has a couple of things going on. He'll get into the manhood camp, father circle, and we'll talk about that. But first, let him say hello to you guys. Mark.
What's going on out there? Black Fathers Go Further. It's a pleasure to be on your show, brother. I'm looking forward to a wonderful conversation, man.
That's it. And let's start. Let me tell y'all how positive this brother is. I'm going to read, and he's going to allow me to read just the prologue. It's only a half a page long. I'll skim through it. But there's certain parts in it I just want you guys to hear, okay? Because Mark has full custody of your daughter, right?
That's right.
And it was a battle. It was a struggle. But
absolutely,
a lot of cases, men don't get this. He got full custody of his daughter. So you figure, wow, after all that, it's a win, right? This is how Mark starts his book, ladies and gentlemen. He says, I didn't win. Despite what many have said, I didn't win. Getting full custody of my daughter wasn't a win or a victory. And so you're probably thinking at that point, well, why not? You got full custody. It's what we want, right? He goes on to say, it was a result of a long, hard fight with a great deal of support from my family and friends and a tremendous amount of radical self-evaluation. Remember those words. We're going to get into that. Then he says, this is my favorite part, this whole paragraph. My journey towards full custody started before I filed court papers asking for shared custody. It started before the sheriff knocked on my door at 6 a.m. to serve me restraining orders forbidding me to come near my child or my mother. It started before the Office of Child and Family Service contacted me to discuss allegations that my then girlfriend, now wife, had physically abused my daughter. It started with the decisions I had made in romantic relationships throughout my adult life. Now, all of us can relate to that, all fathers. Here we go. It started with my lack of emotional intelligence, my unwillingness to be accountable and engage in self-discipline, and my lack of self-worth. I'm going to stop right there because we like.
Who wrote that?
Whoever wrote it, let me tell you, there's my bird. It pierced my soul because I get it and I get what you're saying. So this is why I want to lead into your manhood camp and your fatherhood circle and that whole situation. What is that all about? Please tell the people.
Well, Manhood Camp is an organization that I formed about 10 years ago with my business partner, Trayvon Tillis. He came to me, he said, hey, look, man, I'm starting this organization. We're going to be working with youth and we're going to help them to guide them towards, to contribute to helping them guide them in the proper way towards manhood. I was like, hey, sign me up. I'm in, you know what I'm saying? Because I did that work when I was in New York, right? Even though I ventured away from it and I got into the entertainment industry, that passion to help youth and families never left me. So when he introduced the idea to me, man, I was excited. We started to put the elements together to make it happen. And we started working in a high school with youth that were considered to be incorrigible, right? It was youth that the teachers couldn't do anything with. And so we talked to the disciplinarian there. Her name was, I think it was Miss A. So she was like, hey, look, you know what? I love, the format and what I'm reading. I'm going to give you a chance to work with these guys because we don't want them to be kicked out of school. So we did that for a few months. It went tremendous. They put us into the curriculum, so we were a part of that for at least 2 years.
Right.
And so, and when she asked, how did we connect? It was real simple. We engaged them. We came to where they were. We didn't speak over their heads. We learned what interests them, and we started to build around those interests, infusing things that we considered that we knew could help them, but we built it around where they were. And so that led to us, it was basically a traveling organization. So we went around to different places, and then we finally settled in a relationship with an organization that works with foster youth. And we've been there for the past 3 or 4 years. About a year and a half ago to 2 years ago, especially it was born out of what I went through with my custody case. I said that fathers need to be engaged,
yes,
heavily engaged. So I said to Trayvon, let's start a fatherhood circle, right? And that was just what it is. It's a bunch of fathers sitting in a circle, talking about things that fathers need to talk about, sharing ideas that fathers need to share, and learning things from fathers that other fathers need to learn. And it wasn't meant to be just about what was happening if they were going through a court case. That was included in that because that was part of my journey. So I knew I had to incorporate that in there. But I wanted to be bigger than that. I wanted to be about fatherhood. So if the father was going through something with his 16-year-old daughter, sort of, rejecting him now, and that was blowing his mind because that used to be his little princess, I wanted to have a discussion around that. I wanted to share ideas with other fathers who had been through that part of their journey and how did they get by, right? So it's an open sharing environment.
So if I'm in LA and there's we're talking to the LA market right now. There are fathers out there listening to this podcast that want to come and join this fatherhood circle. How does that happen?
We do it it's once a month. We're actually going to try to get it every other month, not every, but twice a month. But right now we're once a month. We're at the Beverly Hills, it's not the Beverly Hills, but it's the Baldwin Hills Mall, the community center there. And if you go on my website, we can talk about that a little later. Yeah. They can just get off, because I have an open invitation I send out once a month, or right before, a couple of weeks before the meeting, and they can come. And there's no requirements. There's a bunch of different support groups that I went through when I was going through my journey, and some of them were mandated. I didn't want that for this one. I did for this meeting. I wanted fathers to come in unencumbered by that. Now, if they needed to come to a meeting and they were mandated to come, then okay, we're here for that. But I wanted this to come in and just have a conversation, just have a dialogue to break out of that box that we find ourselves in as men, where we don't talk and share. I wanted that to be this environment.
Absolutely. And what I like about this idea and this actual thing that you're doing, fatherhood, thank you, Diamond, is fatherhood.
He likes it too.
She's a trip. The fatherhood circle is, and I talked about this in one of my podcasts, one thing men don't do. I mean, it's something like black men, for some reason, we just don't, we're so macho with it, and we feel like even if we know we're not right, we don't admit it. It's like we do wrong so much that we actually start to believe it's right. You know what I mean? So there's so much that we need to talk about. And it's so funny because in life, we always talk about if you want to succeed, you need to, have role models. You need to have mentors in your field, follow that. So what you're doing now is providing sort of that mentorship role, because you're a role model definitely to me, and and you're mentoring all these young fathers coming up. Come to this group, let's talk, let's work it out, so on and so forth. Now,
let me just comment. That's very important, because the idea of therapy really, it does scare Black men and men in general, right? Because it's the ideal of being open and being vulnerable, and that goes against what society says we should be. Yes. Right now, there's a new trend, there's a new dialogue coming out. Pharrell Williams just said he sort of disavows what he put in Blurred Lines, and Devon Franklin wrote a book, what is it called? It was called The Truth About Men, and he talks about men being in the box and how they need to get out of that. So there's a dialogue that's afoot about men. It's okay for men to express these thoughts, to express these feelings, but therapy is another thing, man, because that's me sitting in front of you saying that there's something fundamentally wrong. This is the thought, something fundamentally wrong with me as a man, that I need help, you to help me be a man, to be a better man. That's difficult. for
Yeah,
men.
yeah. It's very difficult. And let me ask you, how did you come to this? And now I want to dive into your book because, and I jump from spot to spot because
That's
it's
okay. I'm with you, brother.
but
I
there's,
got girls. They do the jump ropes. I'm
oh,
with you.
so you know what's up. You know what's up. But there's a part in your book, and you know, I know you're open about discussing your whole relationship situation with your ex-wife and what happened and what's going on now. But there's a part in your book, it's early, talk about how the co-worker who you ended up having a relationship with, I believe, you originally sought out advice from her. Like you pulled her aside to ask her advice about couples counseling. You ended up pouring out your heart to her, and you found it like invigorating. Does that have anything to do with everything you're doing now, that moment, or were you already trying to just find that outlet?
I didn't know I was trying to find that outlet. I realize now that I was on the path of getting to that outlet, but I didn't know it at the time. So when I had that conversation with her and I was able to just, for that moment, just be free with my thoughts and not be guarded, not be the mysterious man, not be the man who knew it all, who didn't have to read a map, you know what I'm saying? Even if he's hopelessly lost. For a moment, I didn't have to be that, right? And it was mentally and spiritually invigorating, right? And I said to myself, this is what I need. This is what I need in my life. Now, I didn't know to the degree that I know now how much I needed it, but I knew that felt good. I knew that moment was different than other moments in my life, right? And I couldn't really put a finger on it yet, that it was me being vulnerable. It was me being honest. It was me allowing someone else into my very guarded space as a man, right? And so I didn't realize all of those dynamics were happening at that moment. I do now, right? But then I just knew that, hell, that felt good. I want some more of this.
Right. Now, the flip side of that is, of course, you ended up seeing this young lady.
Absolutely. I guess that's the flip side of being open, man.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. Now,
but let me speak to that for a moment, because I think when I allowed myself to be open, right? Because I had other opportunities to be open. If you read my book, you know, I talk about my dalliances, right? I'm very open about that. But I wasn't open emotionally with those women, right? Here was a person that I did not have romantic feelings for, right? At the time, it was a person who I just saw her around the office and I saw how she dealt. And I felt compelled to have a conversation with her. What I didn't realize was I was having some sort of connection with her. An unseen connection. And that led to us having more conversation and more dialogue, which eventually led to us, you know, being married.
Now, what I do like and appreciate that you really do keep it real.
Yes.
And I appreciate that, because you say things that a lot of us want to say, but don't yet have the courage to say or admit. Like further on later, not too far down in the book, what is that? Oh, the breakup, that chapter called The Breakup, where you talk about the card fell out your pocket and, you know, you got questioned by who is this? And you were like, you know, it's nothing physical, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then you were asked, do you love her? And in that moment, like reality hit. That's pure honesty. You said yes. Please explain that.
I had been a liar, right? I had gotten into relationships where, when I was married, that I was very compartmentalized in the relationships. I was married, and then I had this situation over here, right? And I was in my mind, I was very good at separating the two. And I did that by separating it by lies. And at that moment, I said two things. I don't want to be a liar anymore.
Yes.
That was a very scary moment for me, right? Because I didn't know how to exist outside of that, right? And I said that this person deserves me to tell the truth about this dynamic, even though at that point, there was nothing physical going on. And we had, I think, maybe expressed some feelings for one another, but I felt that she deserved more at that moment, right? And so I did what I told the truth, right? But I don't consider that to be like a strong moment because I should have did that before. Right?
Right.
I should have been able to tell my child's mother that this is over and I'm, and leave and then start whatever, as they say, don't open one door until the other door is closed, right?
Right.
I should have did that. But at that moment, I felt like it was time for me to break out of that mode, to break out of that liar mode, man. And I just did it. And it felt good.
Yes. I mean, reading it felt good. Like, wow, this is what's up. But how do we get men listening, young fathers, old fathers, whatever, men in general, Black men listening to this episode, like, wow, I need to be there. What did it take? Like, how do I get there? Because it seems like it just hit you at that moment, but it was a lot of stuff leading up to it. So what advice do you have to men in that similar situation at that very moment that you were faced with? What do you think how can they get to that moment of truth?
I think that they have to do, as I said in that book, a lot of radical self-evaluation, right? They have to look and see what type of environment are they creating, right, around them. And especially, man, if you're in a relationship and that relationship has a child or children in it, right? You have to look and see what type of environment am I creating around these people that are dependent upon me, right? Am I creating a healthy environment? Am I creating the type of environment that the person in that environment, right, especially the child in that environment, would receive the messages therein of that environment and then be able to flourish, to thrive, right?
Right.
And if the answer is no, you got to say, what am I contributing to make this a toxic environment, right? And then you got to just be real honest with yourself. You can't say, well, if she would only do this, then I would act differently, right? That's saying that someone else controls you, right? Someone else controls how you think and how you move. And that's not true, right? You control that. You control the responses to whatever stimuli is in front of you. So it starts, man, with you saying, what environment am I living in? Is it a healthy environment? And if it's not a healthy environment, what am I contributing to that environment to make it unhealthy? And then just start listing things. Am I being honest? Am I cheating? Am I doing the best I can as a boyfriend or a husband or as a father? Am I really being, if they say I'm the head of the household, well, what are you leading in? Are you leading in prayer? Are you leading in financial literacy? Are you leading in what a healthy dynamic, in terms of physical health, spiritual health? What are you leading in? And what does this environment look like based upon your contribution? And if you honestly can't come away with an answer that it's a healthy environment and I'm doing everything I can to do that, then you got to start saying, okay, then what am I doing that's not making it a healthy environment? And let me tell you something, man, that's not an easy thing to do, right? Because that, for me, I always wanted to be the good guy, right? I always wanted to be the guy that even though I was cheating, right, that I didn't lie to the person I was cheating with, even though I was lying to my wife, I didn't lie to the person. I was a good guy, right? And I didn't want that title to be taken away from me.
Wow.
But I had to take it away myself, man.
Man, that's radical self-evaluation, brother.
Yeah.
And I hope Black fathers that are listening, please find this within. And if you have trouble, just rewind these last 3 minutes of what this brother just said and just play it in your head at night. You know how people meditate? Play this, what he just said in your head overnight. Let it play and think about it, because that's very poignant. I love that. Now let's transition into the part of the child, your daughter. Going through the situation, I know you have your daughter involved. How was she in the process? I know how she was, but how did she handle the whole transition of you leaving the house and you having different lives moving forward?
She was so.
How old, first of all, during that time?
She was young. She was about 4 or 5.
Okay.
So there was not to my knowledge, right? There wasn't a heavy understanding of what was happening. She knew Daddy wasn't in the home all the time, but Daddy was there, right? Originally I worked out it wasn't a very good schedule, but it was a schedule that allowed me to continue seeing my daughter on a regular basis. I would call every night for prayer. So even though I wasn't in the home, I was present in her life, right? I was there. So it is just funny. I'm going to divert. I'm just going to divert for a second.
Sure.
You know, I was reading a report by the CDC. They were talking about Black men in the home, right? And that myth that Black men aren't there, right? And that we're not in our children's lives, right? This is a report that was done around 2014 or 15. But what that report did, it debunked that. They were saying that the father, especially Black fathers, are in the home more than their racial counterparts, right? And so even though I wasn't in the home, I was in her life, right? So I don't know if she felt an absence. I didn't talk about the situation when I was with her. I actually tried to protect her. At the point when it skewed from, you know, an agreement, a verbal agreement between her and the mother that I would see her these days, and we had to go to court to get that agreement, and then eventually we had to do the exchange of the child at a police station. I would say we're going to the castle, right? And the police there, they're the guards. So I still tried to keep her in that magical world, that magical Disney world that she was still in.
Wow.
Still in at that moment. So I tried everything I can do to do that, man.
Wow, that's that's great, man. That's I mean, that's the way to do it. It's funny you bring up that CDC report because I did an episode on that. One of my second or third show, and I think you were so right. Like I broke it down. Blacks are number one, Latinos and whites, something like that. But I really debunked that myth in that episode. Like you're so right about that. So fast forward. So now you're remarried, correct?
Right.
Now, how did that whole thing work with your daughter and your wife now? And how did that relationship work? And how do you feel about that whole thing?
I think when me and my girlfriend, fiance, when we started to really get serious, we kept the relationship from her children because she has 2 girls, and I kept it from my daughter, right? So we took the time to strengthen our relationship, right? We took a year before we exposed anything, right? And so that allowed us to somewhat unconsciously to get ready for the storm that was about to hit. Yeah. So we fortified our relationship first, right? So we did that. And so when we did introduce, it was a very casual introduction. It wasn't that this is my girlfriend. It was like, this is my friend. Because that part was true. So there was no lies in that, right? And it was the same thing with her daughter. So we created an environment where they saw 2 people who were treating each other very nicely. And so that when we did open up about the relationship, you know, they were somewhat already conditioned for it to be a relationship. And so my daughter, I think, was very much like, oh, I'm okay with this, right? And for some reason, man, I don't know if she was okay with it because she still saw me happy and I was still making certain that she was happy. When she would come over to my apartment before I moved in, we moved in together with my wife and us as a family. I had an apartment and she would come over and we would do a lot of stuff. So I didn't diminish my time with her, right? I didn't take away the energy that I was giving her, even though it was being shared now. I didn't allow her to see any diminishment of the fatherly love that she was receiving, right? For us going places, me engaging her in play, helping her read, all of that was intact, right? So I don't think she saw this as a situation where it was going to be something negative. There was going to be a minus with the relationship.
Got you. Now, at this time, at the early stages of you and your I guess, fiance, well, let's say she was a girlfriend at the time. At those early stages, did you have full custody then of your child?
I did. At a certain point, I did get full custody. Yeah.
Let's go into that. So I did an episode, which one of my popular ones called Court Battle of the Exes. I said Court Battle of the Sexes, Court Battle of the Exes.
Right. I like that. That's clever.
It's a good episode. I got a lot of feedback because, you know, and I told a story about how nowadays there's like, it's not leaning towards men, but men have a better chance of winning and presenting themselves well in the courtroom to actually get full custody of their child. Like there's no more like it's not automatic where it goes to the mother. Now it's like they leave it open for you to present yourself. And things you talked about in the interview with Mike, and I don't know if it's in your book yet, something about projecting character. So I want you to get into that part about projecting character and how dealing with a court battle situation, how like, because I know about 5 brothers right now that
Mm-hmm.
know I'm interviewing you and want to listen to this because they're in this court battle situation. So one of the questions I have to ask you is, how did you win? Did it have anything to do with projecting character? Or is that something different? Or were you just a stand-up guy? Did you have everything in order? Did you not have it in order? What happened?
I think we both had everything in order. I think she had, for what she presented, it was presented in a way that was strong, right? And I feel that I had everything together, but let's start from the beginning. One thing I did was I had to fight against the fear of going to court, right? Even so, even though you say, and you're right about that, that there is a trend now to look at men and women coming into court as who is the most fit parent. And that's something that is happening definitely here in California, and it's starting to spread throughout the country. It still leans towards the women, especially with younger ages of children. It still leans towards the women getting full custody or being the custodial parent.
Right.
And so I knew that was still somewhat in the atmosphere. Also knew that as a Black man, there was a lot of historical prejudices against me, right? So I knew that I went into court, I was going to just my physical presentation, my skin color sent a certain message, even if it was an unconscious message to the people around who were not of my color, that whatever messages that they or information that they had got about who I was as a man, as a person, that was in their mind. So I knew I was going against that as well, right? So when I went in saying that there's a lot of negative stuff in her report about me. Let me backtrack for a second. I filed first. That's the first thing I did. At a certain point, I had to walk through the fear, and I filed first. And I put everything in the report, right, that was true about me and about my relationship with my daughter, right? At a certain point, I realized that things were going south, so I started keeping records. I started keeping digital, written records. So I would text messages I would save. So receipts? I started to receipts, everything, right? Okay. Pictures. I started to keep a trough of stuff because I felt something was coming, because I saw the narrative starting from, going from, this was great, Lexington had a good time, to I'm scared of you, right? And so when I started getting those messages, I said to myself, I have to go file, because I know the next thing that's going to come. So I filed first, and then shortly after, I said in the book, 6 a.m., I got the restraining order. But luckily, I had filed first, so everything that was, when we went to deal with the domestic, violence and abuse, the judge looked at everything and said, you know what, the father is already filed, so I'm just going to just transfer everything down there. And so now I was not the respondent at that point. She was, right? So she had to respond to everything that I had put into my paperwork. And that was nothing negative about her. It was only the truth and the positivity about my relationship with my daughter and my daughter's relationship with me. That's the first thing. Good records, tell the truth. Don't downgrade the mother. Just only tell the truth about the relationship, because what judges want to know is this in the best interest of the child, right? And if you can show that in your paperwork, that's the first step. Now, the second step was the projection of character, right? I said that I am a good father, so I have to project that. And how do I project that in an atmosphere that has a bias against me? So I said I have to, even though I was full of, there was anger in me, man. I admit I was angry. I was hurt. I was sad. I was disappointed. And not only with her, with myself, right? So I was, because she did not, and she didn't put us in this web by herself. We did that together, right? So I said, I can't project a certain tonality, right? So when I'm talking about the situation, if I felt like I wanted to cry, I did that. But if I felt like I wanted to get angry with her, I didn't do that, right? Because if I did that, whatever tears I would have shed would have been overshadowed by the projection of anger. And what that would have done, that would have certified what she put in her report.
Gotcha.
So I was very careful to keep a certain tone. And and this part, if fathers are listening, this part is not easy. This takes, for me, it took me just wrapping my mind around the fact that I loved my daughter. And as I said in the book, I led with love at a certain point, right? And that was the love that said that my daughter deserves a good father in her life. And I am that father. Nice. So that is how I went into court. And how I am talking to you right now is how I talk. It was times that I teared up, times that my voice got shaky. But what I did not do, and even though I felt at certain points I wanted to do, I didn't look over at her and get angry and where she can just sort of cower down like she was afraid.
Right.
Because that picture, that would have been it, man. That would have been a Picasso painting right there.
So you hear that, black men? Keep good records, good receipts, everything. Digital pictures, keep it all in order. Be very articulate and well-spoken like this brother is. Do not bash the mother, and represent yourself in the courtroom in a very positive light. Show nothing but the truth between the relationship of you and your child. And that would at least help get you to gain full custody of the child. That's very powerful, man. You speak some powerful words. You need to be on the stage.
Thank you, brother.
You really do. You need to be on the stage. Now, moving forward, how's life now? What's going on? So everything is fine in the household with your new family now. Well,
it is.
How long have you been married now?
This will be 5 years in February.
Oh, so you're not new anymore. Okay, so you're
no, we're not new. We're past the honeymoon
yeah,
stage.
You passed all that. So now you're living the life of honesty. You're doing the right thing. You're raising. You're doing great work. Now, your wife. Hold on a second. She's in the book, right?
She writes the. Actually, she writes the. I think it's the introduction of it.
And hold on, because this is my other part that I want to talk about. Black fathers listening to Mark's story. We're about to wrap it up soon, but Black fathers listening to Mark's story, I encourage y'all to just go back and replay some of the things he said. Is so powerful. But I'm gonna tell you, on a side note, behind every good man, as this brother is, behind every good man, there lies a good woman. Why do I say that? Well, I'm looking at the wrong camera. Why do I say that? Because we all know the truth. Like, we all know the truth. And we know, and women, when they find out, a lot of them just turn their back for some support. Now, in the intro, his wife says, and she's reading the story on Mark, but I just took the last paragraph, and she said to us, or to, just men in general, my advice is to, and this is Mark's wife, fellas, my advice is to cry when you feel like crying. Laugh when you feel like laughing. Heal when something pricks your heart, and then teach your children to do the same.
Woo! Yes.
Teach your children to do the same, because we're talking a lot about relationships, but we are also parents. And to be able to overcome what Mark did and just become that full, honest man, it's very important to teach your children to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
That same path. So I love what she wrote in that book. So I know you have a strong woman behind her. I know you have a.
There's no doubt about that.
And I don't want to go past my time, because my editor gets mad when I go past 30, because it makes him hard to edit. So, I stay around that. I stay around that mark. But Mark, no pun intended. But before I end, I want to say, first I want to say thank you for coming on the show. Like, you're a breath of fresh air, man. You're really positive. Now,
thank you, brother. Thank you.
Even for people that are not in LA, first of all, get the book, My Daughter's Keeper, okay? My Daughter's Keeper by Mark Winkler. Just came out. When did it come out? June? July?
It came out right around the end of June and beginning of July.
Okay, good. So get this book, My Daughter's Keeper, read it. It's so enlightening. And I know a lot of brothers could really benefit from this book, because everything he talks about is everything that we do, doing, or have been through. Like, we fall and play with what he's talking about and what he's been through personally. He's bringing it to us to read. This book is therapy. This conversation is therapy. Talking to him is therapy. So young black men, please get the book. Now, Mark, please tell them how to find you, how to reach out to you, manhood camp, fatherhood circle, all that good stuff.
Everything, all the information about how to reach me, you can go to my website. It's markrwinkler.com. You'll find information about Manhood Camp, about Fatherhood Circle when we have these things. You can send an email, contact. There's information about the book. If you just want to send an email of encouragement, everything, markrwinkler.com.
There it is. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank my guest today, Mark Winkler, and we'll talk behind the scenes, Mark. But
yes, sir.
I want to thank you again for coming on the show.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Being a stand-up brother, man, you're just like the book. I thought you would be this way, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely,
so,
man.
Again, we'll talk later. And to all my listeners out there, y'all know how to reach Mark Winkler. Again, the book, My Daughter's Keeper.
Sure.
Read it. It's good reading. It's good reading.
Good read.
Put down the sports page. Don't be in denial. Just read the book. Let's talk. All right? And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Ghost.
Makes me crazy. First you say that you